I didn't go through all 1,500 sentences that he commuted, and there might be some white collar criminals in there that got to go home during COVID because during COVID, first the rich were let out, et cetera.
Well, look at that. It turns out Cenk was right. There were some white collar criminals in the batch of 1,500 people that Biden granted pardons or commutations to yesterday. And now he's facing a ton of backlash, particularly for his decision to commute the sentence of one of the so-called kids for cash judges. And if you don't remember this story, this scam happened in Pennsylvania back in the 2010s. So here's some background. Michael Conahan and former Luzerne County President Judge Mark Ciavarella took part in a conspiracy that netted them $2.8 million, according to their federal indictment. They facilitated the construction of juvenile detention centers and expansion of another by agreeing to send convicted juveniles to them in exchange for the cash, according to the indictment. So they sent thousands of minors to prison, some as young as 8 years old, for reasons like petty theft, jaywalking, truancy, smoking on school grounds, and other relatively minor infractions. Ciavarella was convicted in February 2011 and sentenced to 28 years in prison, where he still is. Conahan was sentenced to 17.5 years in prison after pleading guilty to racketeering conspiracy. He was released to home confinement in June 2020 with 6 years remaining on his sentence. But now, thanks to Joe Biden, he is a free man. And people are understandably upset about the commutation, including those who were directly impacted by his scheme. Sandy Fonzo's son died by suicide at age 23 after Ciavarella put him in juvenile detention when he was 17 for a minor drug paraphernalia charge. She described Biden's commuting of Conahan's sentence as deeply painful. She said, "I am shocked and I am hurt. Conahan's actions destroyed families, including mine, and my son's death is a tragic reminder of the consequences of his abuse of power. This pardon feels like an injustice for all of us who still suffer. Right now, I am processing and doing the best I can to cope with the pain that this has brought back." Amanda Laura was sent to juvenile detention for 5 years for being involved in a fight at a high school volleyball game. She says of the commutation, it's a big slap in the face for us once again. But it's not just the victims who are calling Joe Biden out. Even Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro is criticizing him. And he had this to say of the decision. He said, "I'll offer these thoughts as an outsider, not privy to all the information he looked at, but I do feel strongly that President Biden got it absolutely wrong and created a lot of pain here in northeastern Pennsylvania." Yeah, I don't agree a lot with much of what Josh Shapiro says, but I certainly agree with him on this. What stood out to me with this story was that there was no obvious reason, or I guess I should say there was no reasonable explanation that was given as to why President Biden did this, apart from the fact that he just wanted to, give a shout out to his homies back in PA. Cenk, I know that you're patting yourself on the back with this one because you did call it on yesterday's show. What are your thoughts on this now?
Yeah, I'm not sure, I kind of called it, and I'm not sure if Biden did this on purpose or not. And that's the interesting part to me, because it's possible, like I said on the show yesterday, that he's like, all right, let's do blanket 1,500 here for the people who had their sentences commuted because of COVID, and that it was just incompetence that they missed these terrible white collar criminals. Or it could be that he thought, well, let me bury those white collar criminals that I like within a giant commutation and pardon so that people won't notice. It's really hard to tell, but some of the judges were Democrats. And so I don't know if that was relevant or not, but those two crooks that Yaz told you about that were the judges that put away innocent kids for a long time in private prisons. We covered that on the Young Turks before. One of the worst cases of judicial misconduct we've ever seen. Those guys should never see the light of day. And the victims are 100% right. We got no justice. We got no, they got no relief. And then these guys get clemency and relief. It's super unfair. But they're not the only ones. There's a just giant laundry list. Some commissioner that was involved in a fraudulent scheme, a Medicare fraud for $26 million. But all that pales in comparison to one guy he let out that did the largest fraudulent tax scheme in American history and defrauded the US government collectively through all of his clients to the tune of about $7 billion. Okay, and so he got clemency as well, and it's outrageous. And remember, the theory that Biden might have done it on purpose is not a wild one. Bill Clinton did it at the end of his term. He pardoned some donors of his, including Mark Rich, whose wife had given the Clintons $1 million. Mark Rich is a little bit complicated because Israel wanted him out too. He was an international arms dealer, and he had sold arms to Israel as well as Saddam Hussein and Pinochet, etc. But they're like, hey, he also gave us arms. So, and of course, the Clintons let him out, and that was a scandal. So but even if we take the best case scenario, Brian, that it was just incompetence. Oh, we didn't notice we were letting out these enormous, horrible white collar criminals. That's not a good look either.
It's not. I was listening to an interview that Bill Clinton did with Andrew Ross Sorkin for the New York Times. And Clinton was defending Biden's pardons. And Clinton was saying that he too had recognized at the end of his presidency that there was this long, persons long backlog of people that needed to be considered for pardons. And his only defense of it really was that it's complicated. That's it. It's complicated. And I suppose the rationale for this is complicated, that it's so deeply rooted in partisan friendships that, you know, you'd have to unravel the whole thing to sort of get to whether it's a donor situation or otherwise. But the way, no matter how you slice it, it's just such a bad look to the American people. Mm-hmm. It just looks bad. The optics are horrible. It's exactly what people hate: privilege, a kind of getting a pass for things when most people are, you know, going to jail for not having an insurance on their car. You know, I mean, it's just such a colossal bad look.
Yeah,
sad.
Yeah, and he blew it because otherwise the other pardons and commutations of like the guys who had the drug offenses and the really light level stuff, those are exactly what pardons and commutations are for. And so, and it looks like he's trying to distract people from the Hunter Biden pardon by doing this record pardon and commutation, largest ever. But you can't have these guys in there, otherwise it ruins the whole thing. I mean, I said credit where credit is due on the correct way to use a pardon yesterday, except the asterisks that I mentioned that we showed you guys here, and it turned out the asterisks turned out to be gigantic. Look, last thing for me on this is that the reporters should ask, because this is a serious issue, was it a mistake to do these corrupt politicians and white collar criminals, or did you intend to? That's a very fair question.
Yeah, I think that is the question. And I think that it's kind of what Brian was talking about. That's what's so frustrating about all of this. Also, the timing could not have been worse in light of what's going on right now with the healthcare industry and the spotlight that's being put on that right now. And just the fact that there is so little transparency. Josh Shapiro, he even touched on it himself when he said, I don't know, I don't have all the information that the president was working with whenever he decided to commute all these people. But that is what's so frustrating about it. The fact that things are so entrenched and the fact that there are so many layers to all of these stories, to each individual case. And it just seems so flippant that people like this were commuted. So I think it's all very frustrating to the American people. And yeah, it does not make us look good. This is a really bad look, especially whenever now there is this movement where people are saying we want more transparency, we want more equity, we want just things to be more just, and we want our justice system to reflect that.
I'm a little confused. This is called Kids for Cash, and then there's that Cars for Kids. These are not the same thing, right?
Although give them time, man, they'll figure it out.
Does the Kids for Cash have a jingle? If it does,
oh God,
I say keep them in jail. On that Cars for Kids jingle, exactly. I hear someone laughing out there. I want to drive my car off the road every time I hear it. It's
those people should be put in prison as well.
Yeah. just Just thought I would add that.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.